Okay, so I'm here. Is this thing on? Oh. Right. Hello, anyone that's there. I'm not sure what's happening here because Yevgeny isn't here or hasn't joined. So can you just let me know that you can see me and you can hear me out there in the world? Oh, thank God. Okay. Oh, there he is. Right. Drama over.
Hello,
Oh,
hello.
can't
Just
hear you, Yevgeny. We can't hear you. All right. Let Yevgeny sort out his tech. I just need to close my office door. Right.
hello.
Hello, everybody. Oh, and we're working on LinkedIn this week as well. This is amazing. Yay. All right. Let me just take off my Christmas jumper.
Can you
That
still not hear me at all?
looks just get myself sorted because, of course, my Mickey Mouse jumper is so much more professional than my Christmas jumper. Right. So, whilst Yevgeny is trying to sort himself out, and I've got cups of coffee and various things here, um, let me just kind of talk you through who we are and what we do. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to ask you to start thinking about questions that you might like to ask us through the course. Yevgeny's kind of, ah.
Can you hear me? Can I hear me?
We
Am I
still
am I
can't hear
audible?
you.
No?
I need to take off my specs as well. Otherwise, you get the reflection. Okay, so Yevgeny's going to keep playing around with his tech. And whilst he's doing that, let me just fill you in on. Oh, no, I can't hear Yevgeny. And oh, can you all hear Yevgeny? Oh, it says we can hear you both. So it's just me, Yevgeny, that can't hear you. That's crazy, but totally unhelpful that I can't hear you because then I'll have no idea what you're saying. So you guys can hear both of us. That is super, super strange. All right, I tell you what I'm going to do. Yevgeny, oh, he can't hear me. I'm going to post a comment. This is hilarious. Um, I'm going to leave and come back. Right. So there we go. That's me saying I'm going to leave and come back. So, folks, Yevgeny's going to talk to you. He doesn't may not know it, but he's going to talk to you. I'm going to leave and
Yes,
I'm
I
going to come
know it.
back and
But
we'll see
the
what
question
happens.
is, can you
All
hear me?
right.
Right, folks. There we go. So I'm hoping that you can hear me. Because if you can't hear me, well, I see my mic stop moving. So hopefully you can still hear me. So guys, while Gigi is dialing back in, so let me just run with a standard set of introductions. So, as you know, my name is Yevgeny. I am one of the co founders of Day One Careers, along with Gigi, who is now joining. And hopefully, you can all hear us both, and she can hear us, everyone. So, quick intro about how this whole thing started. So both Gigi and I used to work for Amazon. We used to be hiring managers. We used to be interviewers, and also Gigi was a bar raiser as well. And at some point in time, we started recognizing that folks who spent a lot of time preparing for their interviews were doing a lot better in our Amazon interviews versus the folks who didn't, even though folks who didn't oftentimes had very strong resumes and strong functional profiles. So um, at some point in time, we both quit the corporate world, created our own Amazon interview coaching and preparation businesses. I started with the Day One Careers brand. Gigi started with, I believe, Amazon Interview Wiz Academy, and she is our one and only Amazon Interview Wiz. That is the title that will stay with her forever. And then at some point in time, we merged our businesses together because we thought that we can complement our expertise and bring you guys lots of great content, lots of great YouTube lives, paid content, free content, and support you in all things Amazon interview. So we're running these weekly sessions to answer any questions related to Amazon's behavioral interviews. Now, as you think about what questions to ask us, let me just give you a little guidance in terms of what questions we will likely answer and which questions we won't be able to answer. If you're going to ask us something generic along the lines of, hey, I've got an interview for such and such role next week, do you have any tips? In which case, we'll have to say, yes, we've got loads of tips. It's all in our YouTube channel. So go ahead and have a look at those. And there's plenty of general tips about Amazon behavioral interviews. On the flip side of the same coin, if you ask us, hey, I have an interview for a data center construction manager too, next week,
Can't
in which
hear.
you still can't hear me. I can hear you, and everyone else can hear me, apparently. Um, oops. OMG. Right. I'll just keep talking, folks. Just stay on. Well, you'll get your session today one way or the other. So, um, right. So, yes, on the flip side, if you guys want to ask me something along the lines of, hey, I've got a data center manager to interview next week. Do you have any tips? This is where we'll be out of our depth in terms of expertise, because there are thousands of job families at Amazon, and each of them has some sort of functional type of an assessment, and oftentimes teams can plan these functional assessments in exactly the same way that they any way that they want. So, Gigi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Gosh, that was loud.
Okay, hang on.
That is very, very loud. Anyway, I'll keep droning. I'll keep droning. You get yourself ready. Anyway, so I've just spoken with folks about what they shouldn't ask us in terms of the very generic versus very specific questions. So I guess now it is a good time to actually start dealing with individual questions, wouldn't you say?
Yes. How's my sound level?
Your sound level is fantastic, and for some reason, there you go. Okay, your sound level is excellent.
Okay.
So yes, amazing, fantastic. So Gigi, this is the time when we're done all of the introductions. We're sorted our tech out, so we can just dive in and start working for what the people are expecting.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I have no idea what was wrong. I just had to change equipment. Right. Let's find our first question, shall we?
Yes, your voice sounds very nice on that Yeti mic. You should use it more often. Okay.
You saying my voice doesn't usually sound nice?
Oops. See, you give a British woman a compliment, she'll turn it around you for you. Anyway.
Right.
Well.
Oh, someone's going for a haircut. Ian's just gone in for a haircut. Okay, that's funny. Okay. I hope he has a good haircut. Okay. Oh, here we go. I'll pick this one. And it's Shivam. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name there. Okay, your question is how long, time-wise, an answer should be to a question asked during phone and loop interview panel. Could you share what are the important details that one should not miss? Okay, so there are two questions in there. So let's deal with the first one, which is how long should your answer be? I do have my cup of coffee here as well. I've been very badly organized. Sorry, everybody. Okay, Shamam. So how long should your answer be? Unfortunately, there's no single answer to this question because much depends really on your level, which I think is kind of both causal and correlating to the ideal time spent on an answer. Essentially, an Amazon interview, like all behavioral interviews, is about how you did something. You need the what, obviously, but really they want to know how did you go about doing something? How did you behave? And in order to get to the level of information on how, you do actually have to invest a significant amount of time in telling your narrative in order to get to that level of depth. So for very junior people, say L4s, L5s, so that's kind of brand new entries or people who have probably got maybe 2-3 years worth of experience, we would recommend you probably aim for somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes for each of your individual stories. As you get more senior, the expectation would be that you need to spend more time than that telling your story. Otherwise, you just won't get to the level of detail, or you won't be sharing stories that are complex enough to meet the scope and complexity of the role that you're interviewing for. So if you're talking about a role where you're kind of an L6, so that's kind of, I would say, mid-career, people that have been working for somewhere between, I don't know, 5 to, let's say, 8, 9 years. This is big approximations, by the way. It's done by the clock. You're probably looking at a sensible answer length running somewhere between, let's say, 5 and 8 minutes. Once you're moving into quite more senior level roles, so Amazon would be an L7, so somewhere between 10, 15 years plus, you're going to have to really impress your interviewer in terms of the scope and complexity of each of your stories and get to that level of detail of how. So you could quite comfortably go anywhere from 8, even up to 10 minutes for each of your individual stories. So, Shivam, you're going to have to, obviously, what level you're at in your career. So take that on board and make your judgment in terms of which of those brackets you lean into. I think Yevgeny and I, general principle is go more, and then you can always pull back. So if you feel you're maybe going on too long or you're giving too much detail, you can always say to your interviewer, can I just check, am I giving you the right level of detail? And then if they're saying, actually, I'd like you to hurry up a bit, you need to speed up and maybe lift up a level on some of your details. Or if they say, actually, I want a little bit more detail than you're already giving me, you can dig a little bit deeper and give them a little bit more in terms of detail. But you're better off to bias towards more information rather than risk giving less information and hoping your interviewer asks you the right follow-up questions that will allow you to share the appropriate detail for that particular leadership principle. Our philosophy is you kind of need to take ownership of your interview to the degree that you can. And part of that is if you know a piece of information is valuable or you believe a piece of information is valuable, you're better off tabling that than hoping and praying that an interviewer will ask you a follow-up question, let alone the right follow-up question. Would you add
Nicely
anything,
handled.
Yevgeny?
No, nicely handled. Let's move on to the next one. So here we got a question from Ian. Ian says, well, it's not a question, but it's rather a comment that Ian is nervous because his current company is not just as data-driven as they should be. And I guess this is something that we kind of deal with routinely with different candidates and clients. Like what is it? Like what do I do if I just don't have the data? And what we'd say is, first of all, like, there is no expectation for anyone at Amazon that the rest of the world works like Amazon. I know this is contested sometimes, but generally speaking, Amazon hires from all across the board, from small startups that might not have a lot of data to all the way to big Fortune 500, some of which don't have data, some of which have data. The bottom line is you only have as much data as you can fish out. So obviously you can't invent data when there wasn't data. But what you can do is you can reasonably estimate, as long as it's not outlandish, right? Still need to be reasonable. And as long as you mentioned that, look, on that particular occasion, the metrics didn't exist, but I would estimate the outcome in the range of X and Y, and perhaps share some assumptions around why it's not X plus 1,000 between Y and Y plus 1,000. The other thing that you need to remember is that at the end of the day, data is just facts demonstrated in measurements, right? So it's just facts in the number line. If the number line isn't relevant to a particular situation, if your objective was binary, deliver X by Y, and in your results you delivered X by Y, then that is data, because that is a fact. You did accomplish it. The only other thing that I can tell you is that yes, do share data, but do demonstrate impact. There's a difference between data and impact. Data is just a measurement of something, and impact is how profound the outcomes of your work were in terms of how they influenced entities that are other than yourself, which is your team, department, company, and that sort of thing. So hopefully that will, I don't know if that's going to put you at ease or not, but hopefully it will provide you a little bit more context so that you can more comfortably go back to memory lane and try to fish out the necessary facts to prop up your stories. Any other guidance you would add, Gigi, to this?
The only one other recommendation I make when it comes to data is the concept of borrowing metrics. So, for example, if you are part of a legal team that has had to approve a certain contract that then would lead to a large sale. Now, the actual sale itself is not, you can't own that sale per se, but what you can say is that the work that you did to push this contract over the line contributed to $1 million worth of revenue for the organization. So as long as you're clear that you don't think that you did it on your own, but you can nonetheless demonstrate an impact through what I call borrowed metrics, because you can arguably say, had you not achieved that, then that $1 million would not have made it into the organization. And I'll apologize for the dreadful light in my office. I'm so sorry. I look kind of whitewashed, and then there's these weird lines that come down. I'm going to have to change my ceiling lights. I think it's because they're LEDs. Anyway.
But you sound so good, so no one cares.
Okay, just close your eyes then.
Very radio style.
I bet they all say that to you, don't they, Evgeny? Right. Okay, so let's move on and let's see if we can find another question. Okay. So I'm just going to pop this one up just so that this person knows we can't answer their question rather than that we're ignoring them. So this is, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. I'm sorry, I'm horribly ignorant, but if I try that, I'm going to kill it. I know I am. So apologies, Mr. Singh. Lovely to see you. So just wanted to let you know we're not ignoring you, but we can't give you advice on how to prepare for a business analyst case study. We focus on the behavioral interview element of the Amazon interview process. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands of job families out there, and we can't be experts in all of them. So rather than mislead anybody, that we can provide insight and support in areas that we don't actually have the experience and right to, we'll be honest with you every time and let you know where this is not the area of expertise for us and we cannot answer this question. But I just wanted you to know that so that you don't think we're ignoring you. Okay. Let's move on then. Okay, right. Mill. This is a two-parter. So you made it to the final loop and you didn't make it through, but the recruiter gave you some feedback and you fell short on the functional fit, but there wasn't any red flags on the leadership principles. Regards the leadership principle feedback, is the no red flags a good thing, or is that a bare minimum threshold? Okay, so I think in language terms, that's a bare minimum threshold. If there are red flags raised for a candidate through the interview process, that's a problem. You know, if you have red flags, the probability of that person getting hired is pretty remote. Someone would have to make a good case for why that red flag was either irrelevant or coachable. So I'm not sure that that feedback is as useful as maybe you thought it was. I think what the recruiter is basically saying to you is, we didn't reject you for any catastrophic reasons on a leadership principle basis. We rejected you primarily on your functional skills. Now, that doesn't mean to say that your leadership principle stuff was raising the bar, but we only rejected you on your functional skills. So it's a little bit of a non-statement, I suppose I would consider it. Yevgeny, have you got a different opinion? Anything to add?
Well, I mean, I've been told on many different occasions that there is no bar for LPs. In reality, the way that folks do assess candidates is they are trying to kind of elicit whether what they're hearing through your behavioral answers actually is better than what they can expect from the rest of the Amazonians. But from the way that I'm reading this is that, you know, you're probably a cultural fit to Amazon. It's just you haven't got, you know, the functional experience that they're looking for. Unfortunately, the feedback, the way that it's given to you that there are no red flags, is not very useful. Not very useful at all.
No.
So, you know, but my interpretation of it is maybe just a tad more positive from the perspective of, you know, they think you're good for Amazon. It's just not particularly good for that specific role. All I would say is keep applying. As long as you're applying for relevant roles, maybe see something that is maybe a tad more junior, or if you think that maybe it wasn't just a seniority issue, but not 100% perfect fit, maybe just look for other similar roles and see if a different team will consider will come to a different conclusion looking at your resume. That's the only addition that I would have.
Cool. Do you want to pick the next one?
Yeah.
I'm going to try messing about with my light a bit as well.
Cool. So while Gigi's doing that, we're gonna look at this question. So outside of the skills traits for this role and his or her favorite LPs, what are some of the good questions to ask a hiring manager to better prepare for the loop? Well, I would say, from the stuff that you've mentioned in this question, Naomi, I would say his or her favorite LPs. I would rephrase the question slightly more around what are the leadership principles that the hiring manager believes are critical or important for this role. Hey, Gigi.
Hi, I don't know what happened. They kicked me out.
No, I don't know either. I thought that was intentional, that you wanted to do something magical and reappear.
Doesn't look that much better, does it?
So I was just saying that in terms of asking what are his or her favorite LPs in terms of the hiring manager, I'd just say, rather than doing that, ask what leadership principles are important for someone to be successful in the role that you're applying to, with the hope that the hiring manager will share with you the critical and important leadership principles that they will interview you on. So that's one thing. In terms of the skills and traits for this role, I mean, again, this is something that it's useful to clarify if it's not in the job description or it's not perfectly mentioned in the job description, but it won't necessarily help you at a crazy level to prepare for your behavioral interviews. What I would ask the hiring manager over and above the leadership principles is something that would mostly help you figure out whether you want this role if this is offered to you. Stuff like how many folks are in the pipeline who are interviewing, or if someone used to do this role before, why is it that they don't do this role anymore in case this role was occupied before, right? And if it's a new role, ask them, well, what prompted you guys to open this role? Like, why do you need someone to do this to do this job? What are your big plans? What are you hoping this person to accomplish? Ask about career development opportunities. It's all fair game, because at the end of the day, when they make you an offer, and let's hope they do make you an offer, they want to make sure that you don't run away after 3 months, or internally or externally. So I would say, other than trying to see what leadership principles they believe are critical for this role, everything else is for you to make a better decision. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
Only to say two things, actually. I think Naomi, or Naomi, because we can pronounce it either way, might have been with us last week. So welcome back. I think I recognize your name. We do actually have an awesome blog on our website, Yevgeny, which is a whole blog about great questions to ask your hiring manager. So if you want to head on over to our blog on Day One Careers, Naomi, there is a whole article that will go deep on all of the possibilities that you might want to think about in terms of asking hiring manager. We've got a really extensive blog. I think we've got something like 53 articles on our blog at the moment, and they're all awesome. So if any of you haven't checked out our blog, I think that's also worth having a look at. I think Yevgeny's just checking to see whether it was there.
While you're picking the next question, I'm actually going to post the link right into the chat, people.
Cool. Right. Let me then answer this one for Jamie. Hey, Jamie, very patriotic there. How do you suggest answering the salary compensation question if it comes up prior to being offered the position? I've heard this is a possibility. Any thoughts? Great question. So, Jamie, I'm going to start with, I really hope it does come up before being offered the position, because everybody who is taking part in that process really needs to be confident that at the end of the day, you'd actually want the job from a commercial point of view. None of us have jobs out of the goodness of our hearts. We go to work because primarily we need to earn money to pay our bills. So, really, in an ideal scenario, either your employer shares information on the salary bands on the job description, which happens in some places and doesn't happen in others, or your recruiter early on in the process checks with you what your expectations are, or you in return or on your own merits ask the recruiter what the compensation looks like, because it's very frustrating if everybody goes through the entire interview process and you get to the end only to discover that you can't actually afford to take the job. So that's my first pitch. I really, really hope it does come up. And if it doesn't come up, Jamie, I would really recommend that you bring it up. So then the question becomes, what do you say if they ask you or if you want to share with them? You have to do your research, Jamie. You have to go and check out local sites in North America, and I think it covers Canada pretty well as well. Websites like levels.fyi and payscale.com are good and quite reliable resources. You could also maybe look at teamblind.com, but that tends to be a bit more techie focused and is it's not structured to be a salary kind of website. It's just people posting about the offers that they got from various different companies around the world, but that's potentially a resource for you. I was going to say if you're outside North America, but I'm going to guess you're not, Jamie. But for everybody else, you'll have to look at local websites. It varies massively from country to country. I know in the UK, indeed.com, .co.uk have a pretty comprehensive site, but you'd have to dig around if you're outside the UK or North America. Once you understand what that salary range is, then it's a case of taking a view of kind of what it is that you're looking for. You might not share this with the recruiter. You might not say, this is my ideal number, although, it might be, you might shortcut some debate at the end if you do. But what you can say is the range in which you expect their compensation to fall. And then I would suggest in the background, have a plan for yourself. Take a view of what offer could they give you that would make you literally jump on it and say, yes, I want to sign the dotted line now before you change your minds? What's the number that you would consider to be the kind of an acceptable number? And what's the number at which you absolutely wouldn't accept anything and you can't go below that number? You might not share that with your recruiter, but when it comes to the end of the process, you'll at least pre-planned for yourself a set of numbers to benchmark the offer that comes to you. But I would always say, start off every process with a view of what the compensation range is at least, and be comfortable that if you were at the very bottom of that range, that you would still want to take that job. I'm sure Yevgeny has some other advice. He likes the negotiation piece. So going to chip in with anything?
No, see, I love the negotiation piece, but we've been discussing this so much already. Then I think you and I are in such a perfect sync on these things. So I think it's all good on my side.
I was going to say, aren't we on all things, but we're not. So like any good relationship.
No, exactly. Hey, we've got yeah, I know. I was looking at Minka's question. So welcome back. Always great to have you with us. So yeah, Gigi, this one is an interesting one. It would be great to see kind of what you think about this, because this one got me a bit puzzled. So let me just read this for everyone. So Minka here is sounds like, so she's got a loop coming up, but the recruiter who is leading her with this particular interview process told her that there's another recruiter who reached out to her current recruiter and wants Minka to interview with their hiring manager. So Minka's profile is getting around and is getting some traction. So that's interesting. But her current recruiter told them that she was still interviewing. So Minka, so the way that you phrase this, I don't 100% understand what the question is, but let me try and interpret this as this. And Gigi, let me know if you think I'm correct. So by the sound of it, there's another org that wants to interview Minka, but her current recruiter is blocking her from being interviewed by that other org. And I guess Minka's question is, can you interview for two roles at the same time? So I'm going to give you my understanding. And then Gigi, be great if you can weigh in with your understanding. So from all the different situations that I've seen at Amazon, the resounding answer is yes, you can. You can interview for more than one role. Sometimes, if the role is very similar, the two teams can collaborate and save their time and your time. And that way, some of them you'll have parts of the interview with representatives of one team, and parts of your interview schedule, your loop, with the representatives of a different team. And then they will decide who gets to offer, or they may even compete for you and try and sell you the role in different teams. Sometimes you can interview with multiple teams in parallel, and I've seen this happen for sure. And it often happens when you apply to different roles by yourself, and they just interview you. I've never seen a situation where a candidate would have been blocked by a recruiter from a different organization, unless they're very keen for you not to be snapped up by a different team, and it's a bit of an internal competition. But Gigi, you must know more details about what's happening there.
Well, you're absolutely right in the sense of, as far as I'm aware, there is no policy that prevents a candidate from applying for and being interviewed simultaneously for multiple roles. I think what's happening is, and of course, this is a hypothesis, I have no evidence to prove this, a little bit of back channel collaboration is happening here between those recruiters, where one recruiter fancies your chances in their role, and they've basically said to the other recruiter, look, they're in process for me already at the moment. Can you wait and see how this then plays out? And then if my team don't want her, then you can chase her down. I suspect that's what's happening, because it's not true that you aren't allowed to interview with multiple organizations. How you deal with this is another matter, because it's clearly a little bit tricky to go back to your recruiter, Minka, and essentially tell them that they're lying to you and you want access to this other team. You know, you want as many chances as you can to get a job, obviously. So you might want to go back to that recruiter and think about this advice. Don't take it on its kind of own merits completely. You might want to go back to that recruiter and tell them that you've heard that it is possible to combine interview processes between two teams. Is this a possibility if this other team are interested in you? And then I think that's a slightly more strategic way of pushing back on that recruiter's statement that you can't interview with two teams, in such a way as you're not actually telling them that they're a barefaced liar. So I think that would be my advice, and that's what I would do if it was me. I'd say, oh, by the way, I have heard, because, you know, obviously I've been looking around on the internet, or I've got a friend that interviewed at Amazon once a million years ago, that it's possible for you to interview for two teams at once and they kind of join together in the process. Would this be possible with this other team that you were talking to? And then that at least forces them to think again about making absolute statements to you about things that we know aren't true. Any other smart ways around it that you can think, Yevgeny?
Nope. Hashtag with skill. So all good. Right, shall we put the next one on? Whose turn is it? Do you want to take the next one?
Yes. Oh, okay. We'll just do this one for Hitesh. Hello, Hitesh. Welcome. So you've got a phone screen tomorrow for an L6, and you've been hearing different things. It can be with a recruiter or it can be with a hiring manager. So I'm not sure if I need to follow the star. Okay, so in most cases, your phone screen will either be the hiring manager or a team member. On rare occasions, I have seen recruiters do a kind of behavioral interview as part of a phone screen, but not often. Usually your recruiter does the recruiter screen, which covers the basics of your resume and just trying to understand some of your functional experience, et cetera, et cetera. Their job is to essentially work out, are you a functional match for the role? Then they pass you into the interview process proper, if you like, and you're onto phone screens. And those are usually done by hiring managers or team members. But actually, I don't think it matters in the case of the question that you're asking me, because the point is, if anyone asks you a behavioral question, you need to follow the STAR method. Simple. So it doesn't matter if it's hiring manager or recruiter or team member or bar raiser or skip manager of the hiring manager. It's irrelevant. Anybody asks you a behavioral question, tell me about a time when, can you give me an example when, you follow the STAR model. Simple.
Indeed.
Okay. Do you want to pick the next one?
Yes, I'm gonna put three things on the screen with your kind permission. So first one is.
Oh, do you know what? Before you do that, Yevgeny, we need our commercial break. We need our commercial break. Okay. So, folks, do you want to just take Simona off? Sorry, Simona. We will come back to you. I'll make sure that we come back to you. I hope we didn't get all excited and then disappointed. Right, folks, very quickly. So obviously we put a huge amount of effort into this channel, both in terms of the couple of hundred videos that we now have live, but also these individual sessions and all of the blogs and everything that we put up for free on our channel. And obviously we do this because we want to help you. Clearly we run a business too, but we put a lot of effort into our free content. But we do need something in return from you folks, which is to engage in our content on the YouTube channel. And by that, I mean, put a little comment when you watch a video or give it a little thumbs up. Those are engagement signals for YouTube. YouTube will then effectively bump up our content in terms of where it sits in the algorithm. Why that's important is that there is a whole ton of absolute rubbish out there, or stuff out there that's just based on a sample size of one person's experience. And of course, what we share with you is based on hundreds and hundreds of people's experiences and our own experiences in the hundreds. So if you make that engagement signals into the YouTube channel, it will bump us up over some of this other content, and you and other people will be more likely to see high quality interview preparation content from Amazon. So in that spirit, we are going to ask you for literally 1 minute to spend, probably not even that, just to give this particular video a little bit of a thumbs up. And whilst you do that, we have a little bit of entertainment for you. I say this every week. It is a little bit loud sometimes, I have to say. So you might just want to pull your headphones back off your ears. And Yevgeny, if you don't mind, I really need to get an extra one of you in here. I'm going to do a different one because I keep doing the same one every week and it must get boring for maybe Naomi if she came back, and
Minka may not come back if we run the previous
may not
one.
come back because it's boring. It's like watching repeats of Friends, but not as funny. So I'm just going to play something else for you folks. Please do give us a thumbs up, and then we'll go straight back to Simona. Here we go. Like the stream, or like the stream, or like the stream, or like the stream, like the stream, or like the stream, or like the stream, now like the stream, or like the stream, or like the stream, or like the stream, like the stream, or like the stream, or like the stream, like the stream now, like the stream now, like the stream now, like the stream now. There we go. Is everybody still here? We usually lose a few people at that point.
Absolutely beautiful soprano. That was a soprano, wasn't it?
It was everything. I did everything. There was soprano, alto. The only thing I can't do is bass, but
amazing.
All right, we'll go back to Simona. Sorry, Simona, we pushed you off.
No, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so Simona, this is just a comment. So she says, thank you so much for all the free resources. And she's just ordered the Wiz Complete. Excellent. Great time to do that, folks. Seeing as we're running our Black Friday promotion, which you won't escape if you go to our website. It will hunt you down.
25% off. We only do promos once or twice a year. We haven't done any this year. So this is our first one. So don't hold off. If you're thinking about buying one of our courses, you won't get a discount like this again until maybe Prime Day in July 2024. So now is the time. Welcome to the family, Simona. We hope you enjoy the course.
Excellent. And now, so I just want to put this up here on the screen from Ishan, who digested our response to someone asking about data and not having data, and you responded by suggesting to claim your piece of the big pie in case you've enabled the company or the team to achieve something with your personal deliverables. And I think Ishan responded with a little framework. It is entitlement when data is available and enablement when it is not. And I'm a sucker for a framework, and I really like this framework. So anyway, thank you, Ishan. That was really cool. Right. And now we're back to Jamie. And the question is, does Amazon ever ask hypothetical behavioral questions during the interview process, or are all these questions based on the candidate's actual experience? So in the absolute majority of cases, Amazon will ask you behavioral questions that are based on your previous career experience. In fact, even if you Google what are behavioral questions as an interviewing technique, you will never, well, I'm going to say never, I'm going to say 99% probability, you will never find the word hypothetical next to a behavioral, because that is the whole thing. When they were invented in 1980s in academia, the point is to stop asking candidates questions around how would you or what would you do, and rather than switch into, well, tell me about a time when you did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That being said, in some specific cases, such as phone interviews, which are not as regimented as loops or panel style interviews, Amazonian interviewers might ask you hypothetical questions. It does happen sometimes, but the minute you're into the loop, this is when things tend to be 99% behavioral, unless you're interviewing for tech roles, in which case it will be a mix of technical and behavioral. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
No, to your point, behavioral is behavioral and hypothetical is hypothetical. And they're two different things. But you should hope not, but once in a while, to Yevgeny's point, you might. Okay, shall I just move us on to our next one?
Please.
I just realized my mug, it's troublemaker. I didn't realize what mug I had until I started drinking from it. I was thinking, oh God, I hope this isn't one of our slightly on the edge ones. I was lucky.
Not safe for work mugs.
We have a few. All right. So, hi, I've been scheduled for a second round interview. What can I expect and what are the areas to be prepared? Okay. So it's very hard to tell you what exactly to expect because different teams run their interview stages differently. So some teams will choose at stage 1 to test people's functional skills and not test their behavioral at all. Other teams will choose to test both. Other teams will choose to just test behavioral. That will then have a knock-on effect to phone screen 2 because they need to test the areas that they didn't test in phone screen 1. So what I would say to you is have a think about what got covered in your phone screen 1 and ask yourself what gaps there were. So if they didn't cover any behavioral, then you can be pretty certain that they'll be covering behavioral in your second round interview. If they didn't cover any functional, depending on your role, because some roles they don't touch functional at all, but that's rare. Most times they'll try and test your kind of skill set. You can expect that in round 2. What I would say definitively is you should actually ask your recruiter because they're the only person that can really shed light on that situation. Can't guarantee that they will actually tell you, but there's no harm in asking. But there is no single rule as to what exactly interviewers are going to cover at phone screen 1 and or phone screen 2. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. I'm just going to cough.
But all nicely explained. So let's move on. So here's a question from Simona. So the recruiter told her that she's likely to get a stakeholder management functional question, which could also be a behavioral question. Now, what would a mixed question look like, and how should one approach it? Well, I would say that first, it is very possible that they will ask you a functional question, which is a pure question in a behavioral format. For example, tell us about a time when you had to bring on board a difficult and resistive senior stakeholder, for example, right? They just invented this on the fly. And they are free to consider this to be a functional question. Perfectly not. There's absolutely nothing stopping them from doing that, especially if they do this in the context of a phone interview. I think that's pretty legit. And in fact, if I was, as a hiring manager, asking any functional questions, I'd try to frame them in a behavioral format, because you just tend to extract more value out of the candidate's responses that way. Now, in terms of asking you a mixed question, functional with an LP type behavioral question, I think what you're, and this is me speculating, right? And Gigi will weigh in as well. I think there are two leadership principles that just naturally lend themselves well to professional situations where you ended up managing some sort of stakeholders, right? So one of them is earn trust, and this is mostly the time when the dog barks, and
Sorry, I'll go
you need
yell at
to.
her.
No, that's fine. She's lovely. She's great. One of the best dogs ever. So earn trust is when you had to take stakeholders with you. So there was a situation of tension, and you had to manage that tension in order to lead by influence. And then there's have backbone, disagree, and commit. So this is a different situation where you're likely to be asked, how did you stand up for what you believe is right in the business, and you perhaps did it just on your own, and you did it in front of senior leadership, right, which kind of creates that tension in terms of authority. So that's another behavioral interview question related to Amazon's culture, leadership principles, where that naturally lends itself to stakeholder management. I mean, there are other leadership principles that might involve stakeholder management, as you were telling the stories, like customer obsession, but I can think that earn trust and have backbone, disagree, and commit are probably the ones that I would go to. Maybe ownership, maybe deliver results, especially if you perhaps didn't deliver on something that you wanted to deliver. But I would say that they will probably be able to extract the functional evidence that they need from your responses to these questions. So that's kind of what I think. Gigi, what do you think? Did you miss the question?
No, I kind of got the question. Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add from what you say. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Do you want to take the next one?
Okay. Right. So there's a 3-parter here from Mill. So, okay. So you applied for similar roles. Bad idea in hindsight. Not so sure it is a bad idea in hindsight, but that's another point. 0 progress on roles where functional fit is high, software engineer, but made progress on... Right. So if you applied for multiple software engineer roles, Mill, that's not a problem. It really is not a problem. You can apply for multiple roles, and as long as those roles make sense that you applied for, like multiple software development engineer roles, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that advice. Mill, if you applied for a software development engineer, a product manager, a PR manager, I'm being extreme here, and an acoustics engineer, then yes, that's problematic, because everybody... Do you like my selection there?
I love the acoustics manager. That's the best.
Oh, it's just, I coached a guy recently who got the job, by the way, to be an acoustics engineer. It's one of the funnest sessions I've had. It was so interesting. But anyway, that seems crazy, and your recruiter's going to look at you and go, seriously, how does this person possibly think that they have skills for all of these roles? And are they very serious about the role that I'm hiring for, because they want to do all of these other things as well? Are they actually committed and skilled acoustics engineers or software development engineers if they're throwing as much mud at the wall and seeing if any of it will stick? So don't do that. But if they're all software development engineer roles, there's no reason why that's a problem. Okay. 0 progress roles where you made the functional fit, but made progress on one role where the functional fit wasn't as strong. Systems dev. Okay. You failed at the final loop due to functional fit. You reached out to a friend who told you that you've been recycled for 6 months. So they told you that you've got a cooling off period, right? Okay, so am I frozen to apply for 6 months for all roles? Will it hurt your future chances if I apply within 6 months? Okay, so the first thing is your recruiter should have told you had a cooling off period. There's no way you should have to go through a buddy in Amazon to then reach out to the same recruiter that you were talking to hear from them that you're in a cooling off period. If they can tell your buddy, they could tell you. So folks, I would suggest that if any of you don't pass the final stage, ask your recruiter outright, are you in a cooling off period? That's the first thing. Cooling off periods. Okay. So they aren't actually systematically enforced. There's nothing inside the ATS that blocks your application for any particular role because you are in a cooling off period. So some teams will not consider anybody who's in a cooling off period. Other teams will still look at the resumes of people who are in cooling off periods. So it's kind of up to you in terms of whether you apply or don't apply in the next 6 months. Some recruiters might be quite happy to look at your resume while others won't. There's no particular harm in applying for roles and not being passed through, other than to say, if you apply for another 20 over the next 6 months and every single one of them gets rejected, possibly doesn't look so great. But there's not a massive hard and fast rule. So obviously you're a software development engineer and there are like a bazillion of those roles open in Amazon. So I would suggest to you, if you've only just failed the loop, give it 3-4 weeks, something like that, and then find a couple of roles that you like the look of. Don't be throwing tons of stuff at the wall, right? A couple roles, 2, maybe 3 roles of software development engineers, and apply and see what happens. But there is no hard and fast rule about that, and it certainly isn't systems enforced. And as I say, everybody else, once you don't pass the Amazon loop, just ask your recruiter if you've been put into a cooling off period. Okay, do you want to pick the next
Makes
one,
sense.
Evgeny?
Yeah. Okay, so this is the one where I think I'm out of my depth. So the question from Alex here is, could you give me some advice for a person who was a tech team lead before and now wants to become an EM, which I believe is an engineering manager? Should they start with a software development manager first? I mean, Alex, from what I can tell, in a lot of cases, these roles, these designations are used interchangeably. When they aren't used interchangeably, from what I understand, an SDM is an overall team lead, whereas an engineering manager is more of a technical guide and a resource guide to the team. To be honest, in terms of the career path for software development managers, I don't really have an expertise here. Gigi, unless you do, I'm going to move us along.
No, I don't. But what I would suggest to you, Alex, is to reach out to someone who does. So find yourself a senior engineer in any organization, probably Google, Microsoft, Amazon. Just use LinkedIn. And if you want some advice on what the optimal career path is, plug into their expertise.
Yes, just if it's OpenAI, think twice. Otherwise, let's keep going. Should it be called closed AI right now? I have no idea. But here's a real question here that I think we can answer. I have a 30-minute coffee chat with a hiring manager prior to the loop. How should I strategize my time with a hiring manager and balance it between getting tips versus impressing her, making her like me? What questions would you recommend? Well, I don't know. Gigi, I think you and I can both answer this. So it really depends on what the hiring manager's agenda is. I mean, typically when I've seen these coffee chats being scheduled, it's just a cheeky way for the hiring manager to prep you for the loop, which must say that they really want you to join and they just want to give you some tips. And in this case, you don't really need to ask for anything. The tips will just go. Because if the hiring manager believes that that is in their interest for you to work there, given your functional profile, then I guess they're motivated to help you along. Not that this is encouraged, but I think that's what is happening. Other than that, I would say judge by the situation, and if you can't clearly deduce the intent of the hiring manager, then I would say just remember your why Amazon tell me about yourself routines, which you should have ready, and be ready to talk about what motivates you to join Amazon and this manager's specific team. And in terms of asking questions, my earlier guidance, I think, stands. Just ask what is important to you. What would make you want to take this role if it's offered to you? Gigi, what would you add?
I think your point about the agenda of the hiring manager is the most important thing here. If someone's decided to give you 30 minutes of their time, which is very precious, no Amazonian has 30 minutes knocking around, I promise you that. if they've decided they want to give you 30 minutes of their time before loop, chances are they're doing a sneaky prep job, which, by the way, they're not really supposed to do. So I think their agenda is to help you as much as possible, which means I don't think you necessarily have to work to impress them. What you want to do is extract as much gold from them as possible. And by virtue of asking smart questions, to extract that gold, you'll be impressing them anyway. So they're already impressed with you, or they wouldn't be giving you an extra 30 minutes of their time. Ask good questions to prepare yourself for loop, and you'll be impressing them even more. Oh, these hiring managers are getting cheeky, playing fast and loose now.
Totally out of control.
Not to say they weren't always, because they were. I had to have in my time some interesting conversations with hiring managers. All right. So do we have any more questions here?
Yes, there's a question from Safe here, I think.
Okay. There we go. Oh, for technical roles, does it make sense to focus on... Oh, okay, that's a good question. For technical roles, does it make sense to focus on technical stories and behavioral questions? Is it normal to have technical and behavioral questions in the first phone interview? Okay, two questions there. So how about I take the first half and you take the second half, Evgeny, although I think I covered that a little bit earlier. Okay. For technical roles, does it make sense to focus on technical stories in the behavioral questions? Okay, so I'm just going to change the language here a little bit, Safe, because your question applies to almost everybody. Because I think the question more broadly is, does it make sense to focus on stories that relate to the function that you are applying for in your behavioral questions? And the answer is kinda. So what I mean by this is they're using your behavioral interviews to understand how you behave, and that's in the context of the leadership principles. But they're also inevitably going to make assessments around your functional fit for the role. Now, hopefully, and in the majority of cases, they will test you specifically on your functional skills. But if, in addition to impressing them on your functional skills, you're able to weave into your behavioral questions narrative that allows them to see the strength of your functional skills as well as the strength of your behavioral skills, that can only be a good thing. But this comes with a couple of words of warning. The first word of warning is you don't want to compromise on a good behavioral example in order to get a functional narrative weaved in. You're better off to choose a behavioral answer that's really strong for that leadership principle and compromise on the functional rather than choose to optimize for the functional and compromise on the behavioral when the question is in fact a behavioral question. The second word of warning that goes with that is if you do choose to answer a behavioral question in the context of a functional skill that is relevant, you still need to prioritize talking about the behavior, the leadership principle. What you don't want to do is get distracted by the technical detail associated with the functional context that you've threaded into this behavioral story. Now, what can happen is that interviewers or hiring managers get curious about the functional element, and they may ask you follow-up questions to press the flesh a little bit on your functional knowledge and skill, and that's fine. But once that question is answered, stop. Don't keep going and going about the functional piece because that's not what the behavioral questions primarily are supposed to be for. So answer the functional element of the follow-up question that you've been asked, stop, and head back to the behavioral element of your narrative. I think that's it. Anything to add, Evgeny? Makes sense?
No, nothing to add. Makes total sense. And I guess I should probably answer the second part of the question, which is it normal to have technical and behavioral questions in the first phone interview? Yes. It's anything goes.
Yeah, it is anything goes.
Within reason.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, I think we're kind of done. And Naomi telling us we're doing the Lord's work.
The smile goes.
More likely, I'm a little bit closer to the devil than the Lord himself, but there we go. All right, so everybody, before you go, don't go yet, because we have an amazing freebie that you guys really, really need to take. So let me just pop up the, do you want to pop safe back in whilst I put,
Yes.
oh, and you didn't set up the ticker tape either. Shh.
No, I did not.
You just can't get the help these days, folks, honestly. Right. So you have to do the beginning of the URL, and I get to do. Okay. And again. Right, folks. There is an amazing freebie at the end of this URL. It is our free customer obsession masterclass. It's a little bit of a taster of the digital courses that we have to offer, but it perfectly stands on its own merits. It's a little world in unto itself. It talks you through the customer obsession leadership principle. Make sure that you really, really understand the different dimensions of it. We've come up with this concept of facets. Customer obsession has 4 different facets to it. And if you understand those facets, it means it's much easier to identify scenarios from your experience in the past that connect to the customer obsession leadership principle. It also then talks to you about what the interviewer may be looking for in your answers to questions. And then there's a little mock interview at the end. It's me interviewing me, different hair and makeup. Obviously, it's incredibly convincing that I'm 2 different people, but that just gives you a sense of what it kind of plays out like in terms of the interview. It also gives you access to our Heartbeat community, where you can come and join. You can ask questions on the community. You can try and link up with other community members to do share and run mock interviews between the 2 of you. So I would recommend taking the course, even if it's only just to get yourself access to the Heartbeat community. And when you're in the community, do ask questions and say hi to people. And we're trying to make it a really active community. So if you're going to join, please do take part, and we're always there for a bit of a chat. I think that's it.
And before we go, this is what happens when you become a part of our community. This one is from Freddie, who just dropped in to say his weekly thank you for getting me an Amazon offer, guys. That is why we do what we do.
Oh, Freddie, thank you. It's a nice way to end it and make me smile. That and doing the Lord's work. I feel amazing.
Indeed. Pumped.
Woo! Right. So everybody, thank you so much for joining. We'll be back next week, as we always are. Please do go and take that course. There's just no good reason not to, quite honestly. And all of you that have interviews coming up, fingers crossed, we wish you the very, very best of luck. And I will try and sort out my sound for next week. I'm so sorry that was such a disaster earlier on today. And Lincoln, no dancing Gigi's before you go. There are limits to what I'm willing to put myself through in terms of levels of humiliation. So no, require a few glasses of Dom Perignon for that to happen. Right, everyone, folks, take care, be safe. Thanks, Evgeny. I'll see you soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Gigi.
Bye.
Bye-bye.